On January the 17th, 1991, in the opening hours of the Gulf War, RAF Tornado pilot John Peters and navigator John Nichol prepared to attack an Iraqi airfield. The plan was to strike in darkness, but operational difficulties delayed their takeoff until dawn. Attacking in broad daylight would give the Iraqi AAA anti-aircraft gunners a much greater chance of shooting them down. It was to be the first and the last low-level daylight bombing mission of the Gulf War.
We dropped off the tanker, and you feel immensely vulnerable because when you're tanking, you know you're within a safe area, or as safe as can be assured, and then the moment you're off the tanker, that's when really your operational flying starts, because you've got to get down, get onto the deck, and break into enemy territory.
You are detached from the whole thing. You're up there on your pink stallion, you know, charging off to war, and you can't really get a feel of what's going on down below you. So, you know, it's just get on with the job and get in towards that target.
I found myself in the front seat as I approached that, find myself more aggressive, more pushing low and being annoyed. Get low, do this, you know, because when you're you know, obviously at the pilot, you're far more involved with the sort of aggressive side of the aircraft of actually putting your bum along the ground.
As the Tornado raced towards its target, navigator John Nichol constantly updated the aircraft's attack computer. The approach was perfect, but as they pulled up to drop the bombs, something went wrong.
The final part of the attack is to pull a climb so that the bombs will loft off the bottom and on the target. Everything was going perfectly well. We were calling to each other, everything's fine, 3, 2, 1, pull now. And as we came up, I was still looking around, I was looking out to make sure nothing was coming up at us. And suddenly John's saying, I haven't got a package, I haven't got a package. And I thought, what the heck, you know, what does he mean, what does he mean? And I'm looking down to make sure I've got the correct weapon selected. And then suddenly he's yelling, I haven't got the dot, I haven't got a pull-up, which means something to me now. But by this time, you know, I mean, the time that it's taken me to say it, you've pushed on an extra couple of miles, you're high, you're slow, and we were wallowing in the air, and we still hadn't got those bombs off.
Besides swearing at John all the time, going through every damn expletive in the book, I was also trying to get the aircraft down to low level as aggressively as I could without... I was very aware. I mean, the whole thing, I was just thinking, ground, avoid it, you know, but you've got to get it down because other people are trying to kill you.
The attack failed because the bombs weren't automatically released.
I thought he hadn't pressed a button.
Is that true?
In my own mind, I think that's the case. There's a sequence of switches that you have to go through to get this attack. You know, it's not just go in there, pull up, and that's it. And we'd practiced the attack hundreds and hundreds of times with no problems. And there's only two explanations. You know, either the computer didn't work properly, or I didn't press the right button at the vinegar stroke.
I mean, John in the back is putting chaff and flare out with one, and he's got to press the other button. I think he's never, ever not pressed a button in the entire time we've flown, so I reckon he pushed the button, but he just didn't push it hard enough, you know, in the case of doing everything else.
You know, everything was going perfectly well, and suddenly we'd failed. You know, and it's indescribable to try to tell you how we felt wallowing around, you know, in amongst Tripoli, trying to decide whether we had time to re-attack. You know, I mean, we thought against every conceivable notion of how you perform an attack. I was thinking, let's re-attack. Let's try and make something of this. I'm not going to lose face.
Once we got back down to low level, there's still quite a lot of flak going on around us. I was going to turn back on the escape heading, and just as I put on bank, the aircraft just, I mean, it just jumped 30 feet and started tumbling like a cigarette. You know, I said, what the hell was that? And for me in the front, I don't know how, I mean, I just felt I mean, we're pretty low at that stage. The ground, I mean, I was just pushing the stick frantically because the ground was just doing this to me, just coming up and back. And I was just saying, prepare to eject, that's all I could think. When your aircraft just kind of tumbles across the desert floor, and as I say, I mean, when it's suddenly like that and the floor's coming up at you, you know, and I was pushing the stick and the aircraft wasn't reacting, and that, you know, and that's when all your basic instinct of, you know, piloting, you're there going, very apparent, it's not working, you know, prepare to eject. I caught some orange glow in the mirror, and I looked back, and I can see, well, he's 5 feet closer to it than I am. I mean, the whole of the back of the aircraft was just, I mean, it's a big tail and a big tailplane and fin. I couldn't see any of that. The wing was on fire, the fuselage was on fire about here. And you know, decisions in life, it wasn't difficult, was it?
So we were, you know, limping on, trying to get further and further away with this thing burning merrily behind us. And as you know, I just glanced out the wing, glanced out the side to see if anybody, you know, if there was anything else around. And there's just, you know, a towering inferno coming down the spine of the aircraft towards me. And, you know, you're starting to get into a silly situation. It really is time to leave the aircraft now.
And he said, OK, right, prepare to eject. I'd already yanked the stick back, so we were climbing for height because it makes the ejection safer. And we both counted down 3, 2, 1, eject, eject. And I remember just before just saying, why us? And I thought, why? First damn sortie. A real sense, pulling that handle was your sense of failure. You know, this is it. You're out of that aircraft. You're no longer part of the war.
As he ejected from the aircraft, John Peters suffered slight concussion, cut his eye, and badly injured his knee. But both men were relieved to find themselves alive.
Basically, we are really in deep shit now. You know, I mean, the chances of us, it was broad daylight, the chances of us actually making it back to some kind of friendly lines or hiding for 20 hours or something till the combat search guys...
completely flat desert.
Yeah, till the combat search guys could come and get us were fairly limited. So, you know, we just got on the ground and looked around. It was strange. Getting down on the ground, then you're looking around and you suddenly think, my God, you know, we're standing in the desert.
He came across, we were about 50 yards, 100 yards apart, and he came across. And he said, well, this is us then. We're in the Iraqi desert.
We put out a few calls on the radio to say that we were down and safe, got our guns ready for what they were going to be worth, and we started running off. After, God only knows how long it was, it could have been, you know, 10 minutes or an hour, we thought we saw somebody on the horizon or something, and we dropped down and we were looking over the horizon at what we were presuming was a soldier lying on the horizon looking at us. And God, it was probably a tree or something, but you know, your eyes are playing tricks with you and everything there. And after that, we got up and started moving, and you know, a little way on, crawling as we went, and trying to keep as low as possible.
And then we finally saw a man. Quite a way away, but it definitely was a man, and that is the time when you think, for me, certainly, you know, where you can feel your heart pumping, your veins kind of doing, and you're hitting the deck, and you're thinking, what do we do? And you can feel your eyes kind of widening. You've got your gun there, and you're very apparent that suddenly you've gone from, big package, nice tornado, lots of weapons, lots of power, to here's
rather small and insignificant. And then over over one of the sand dunes, this shimmering line of men appeared, coming towards us with rifles. And again, I don't think they'd spotted us, but they were certainly following a trail or something. And we looked at them and saw them coming, and we couldn't move at this point. If we'd moved, they would have seen us. And we were cowering behind a 2-foot, cactus plant or whatever it was, desperately trying to get down as low as we could. And suddenly, there was a shout went up, and they're just opening up with these AK-47s, and it's the most horrifying thing, worse than being shot down. They're just raking the ground around us with bullets. And I'm looking at John, thinking, right, we've got to make a serious decision here now. And I was all for
he turned around at me and said, "Shall we go out with a bang?" Let's stand up and shoot a couple of them, waste them.
Bit of daring do.
But it was like flying to the ground. I just said, no. There's always hope, because why do their job for you? Whatever happens, it wasn't a case if it was 2 or 3 where you could have a chance of winning. They were 12, 15, I don't know, and all with machine guns and wasting the area around us. And we've got these 2 little poxy pop guns. And that's just stupid. You're just going to stand up and get your belly split open. So that was the time we decided to...
So we decided to give ourselves up, do the decent thing. And one of them ran up towards us, grabbed us. I think they grabbed one of the personal beacons off us or something like that. And then he just started punching me in the face. And there's nothing you can do about this. There's little point in reacting or anything. And he's just standing there hitting me, and thank God the officer was there with him, because I'm convinced that,
They were, generally jogging us around. They were hitting John and starting already to grab bits of it. I flicked my contact lenses out, so I had my glasses on, and they ripped those off, took my watch, and...
They were set, as far as I was concerned, they were going to kill us there and then. I thought, well, that's it. That's it over now.
If it wasn't for him, we would... Yeah.
Thank God the officer got hold of them, or whatever he was. And he stopped them, and he pulled them all back, and they basically looted everything that we had on us, and then dragged us off to the vehicles.
Took John's gun out, and in a kind of triumphant, we captured them, put it in the air to shoot, and the damn thing jammed. I thought, luckily we didn't follow the first idea.
Peters and Nicholl were taken back to the airfield they tried to bomb and paraded in front of hundreds of cheering Iraqi soldiers. They were then taken north to Baghdad, handcuffed and blindfolded. There they were handed over to Saddam Hussein's secret police. The longer they held out, the less valuable their information would be to the Iraqis.
We went through this sort of labyrinth, and they put me in a room, and I was separate from John there, I think. I can't really remember. And I was there, and by which stage they'd blindfold us both again, because I think John had managed to get his blindfold off. And then, I don't know, just seeing the world kind of fell in, because I don't know how many, because I never saw it, but they're just a whole load of guys.
They were just punching, kicking, hitting, and I just fell on the floor. And difficult to remember, but, they would drag you up and then beat you back down to the floor again. And nobody was asking anything, nobody was saying anything. I think they were just taking, some kind of strange revenge for the bombing.
So it's just boots and fists at this stage?
Yeah, well, you can't feel, you're just being struck from all sides. It could have been boots, fists, clubs, whatever. And they were just beating you to the floor, picking you up, and then putting you back down again. and you're just writhing around trying to protect yourself as best you can. We had our hands cuffed behind our back, and you're just trying to move your body into position to try to brave the worst of it.
That was unexpected because at that stage, and a whole group of them just came around you, and they're just kicking and thumping and hitting you about the head and the back. And you're rolling around, you're trying to avoid being hit, but you can't because there were too many of them. And I just remember my bloody head rolling around. I was thinking, shit, what? And you're starting to try and think. That was what I was trying to do, think. As to what I was going to do to fight them.
Eventually it stopped and we were left in a corner somewhere, and I could feel somebody else next to me, and I kind of whispered, "John, is that you?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "Oh," he whispered something, couldn't really hear what it was. And they left us for however long it was. After some period of time, they moved me back into the room, and I found myself sitting again in front of the same three Iraqis. And the guy in the centre, the older guy, started questioning me. He started with the simple, what's your number, what's your rank, what's your name? And then he would say, "What did you fly?" And you say, "I cannot answer that question." And he'll say, again, "What's your number?" And you'd say that, and then he'll say, "Okay, what weapons did you carry? What base were you from? What squadron are you from? Are you a pilot or a navigator?" And you're either saying number, rank, name, date of birth, or you're saying, "I cannot answer that question." It's a fairly one-sided conversation.
Did he become angry?
No, he wasn't really angry. He was more reasoned. He was trying to reason with me to get me to come up with the goods, to get me to come up with the information. He would say, "Look," he would say, "What aircraft did you fly?" And I'd say, "I cannot answer that question." And then he'd say, "Why can you not answer that question?" And I'd say, "I cannot answer that question." And it would go on like this. And he'd say, "But surely you can answer this. This isn't going to hurt anybody to tell me what you fly. Tell me if you're a pilot or a navigator. It can't do anybody any harm." And of course, you're always thinking in your mind that, should I just say this? Will he leave me alone if I give him this little bit of information? But, because of what we know from our training, that's once you strike up a conversation with him, then that's the end.
He said, "A pilot or navigator." And before I said, "I cannot," I cannot answer that question. Because I got to, "I cannot," and that's the shock, because you can't see suddenly. I was, my head, and I was on the floor. And you think, they're starting. They shouldn't be doing that. They shouldn't be starting so early. And then they kind of grab you by the hair and put you back up on, drag you up and throw you on the chair again. Name, Peters, rank, flight attendant. Are you pilot or navigator? I cannot, and you're back on the floor again. And then they pick you up, and these just kind of fists at this moment. And then he just kept on asking it. Name, rank. Pilot or navigator? Cannot. And then they kind of just let rip for a while with fists. They started hitting my eyes. They kind of go for the weak spots, really. And my lip had already split and everything, but my eye, they kept on hitting my eye right across, kind of really thin. You can feel the sort of, the wheels, when they hit his cheek, you can feel the kind of wheel kind of come up on you. But they kept on hitting my damn eye, and it was already closed anyway. And again, kind of pilot or navigating, it's just getting, "I cannot answer," and they kept on hitting him in my eye. But it was strange. I just thought, well, it's okay as long as they keep on hitting that, because it was so sort of swollen by that stage. that I just thought, well, my eye's okay, because it just felt like a kind of a balloon full of water. I mean, it was just squelchy, and just, I thought, well, carry on hitting that, mate, because you're not going to get to the eye, because it's just, you know, it's just not there anymore.
They moved us down the corridor, and then you were standing, again, completely disorientated, in the dark, and you didn't know where you were in relation to anything. Yes, you were just standing, and you could have been in the middle of a field somewhere, or you could have been in a coffin somewhere, not touching anything. And again, you stand and you wait for something to happen, and sure enough, I was standing about 6 inches from a wall, I found out. Somebody would stand behind me and just smash the back of my head so that I headbutted the wall, and you'd stagger back, and they'd stand you up again and then leave you. And they'd leave you for a minute, they'd leave you for an hour, you know, you can't tell. And then they'd do it again, and then they'd do it again, and then they'd do it again, you know, it's...
You don't want to be weak either. You're desperately assessing what I found myself, assessing sort of how I was doing, because you've... Pain after a while, you get used to that. You know, and they start moving it around the body, that you start saying, yeah, it's okay, it's hurting it. Well, they just keep on there, that's great, it's okay, you're doing okay. Okay, so you're on, yeah, they're picking you up. And I found myself talking to myself and trying to say, no, you haven't got me yet, it's okay. I found myself trying to take myself out of it.
They again dragged me outside somewhere, and I was standing with my head against a wall and my feet further back from the wall, standing on the arches of my feet, which is a classic what we call stress position. It means your muscles are cramped, you're in an incredibly uncomfortable and unnatural position to be standing, and you desperately want to move to relieve the stress. And of course, every time you move, then there's somebody there standing in the darkness somewhere who will hit, kick, whatever, but you back into the stress position, you know. So again, you're in a no-win situation. If you stay where you are, you're in pain. If you move, you're in pain.
Did you move? What happened?
Well, of course you move, and because at some point you have to move. It's, you know, that's what the stress position is there for. At some point you have to move, and so they were there. They'd you know, punch, kick, beat you down to the floor, pick you up, put you back against the wall in the stress position, and wait for you to move again.
You start to realise that this is not going to stop. You know, it's not like being in a pub brawl or sort of picked up on outside at a pub and just beaten up. I mean, it's controlled. They're using pain, and they're using, you know, the wall, the bat, and the clubs and stuff like that. In a precise way. I mean, they're deliberately inflicting pain in a very stylized way upon you. The focus of that concentration. I mean, your mouth goes dry, and you can smell the guys that are hitting you. You can feel your own sweat, and you can kind of taste your blood. It's kind of gritty in your teeth, and you're just trying to hang in there as long as you can. You're thinking, well, here, you know, Helen's not going to have me any longer. You know, I'm not. And my children, I mean, my Tony'd just been born, which was lovely, but I think my main focus was on Guy, my little boy, because I just thought, you know, I won't be able to kind of be his father. I didn't like the thought of someone else bringing my son up. I couldn't stand very well because my leg was quite bruised. And then he just kind of pulled his leg up. Oh, I felt like as if he was just stamping down on the knee. And my knee just kind of was going concave, really. I mean, it just, as if he sort of karate chopped right into my knee, stamping down with the heel. And what I was with, rather than, I mean, all the blows you're going, you know, you're grunting and things like that. And I let out a kind of a yelp, I suppose. And that, well, first of all, the pain just kind of rocketed right up the side of my body and in my head and everywhere. And I was on the floor and I let out this yelp, and I didn't control the yelp, which is silly, and that was it. Suddenly, they yanked me up, and they did it again, and yanked me up and did it again, yanked it up and did it again, and it just kept, yeah. And look, the guy, all I remember, guy going, "Are you pilot?" And I have a pilot, and they just carry on for a time. You think, and then they sort of stop for a while, and then they go back to, right, name, Flight 10 Peters, or Peters, rank, Flight 10, number. And then they say, are you pilot or navigator? And that's just, that stage I thought, well, perhaps I can get away with it. And I just stayed silent for a time. But then they just start ripping into me again and hitting my knee and about my head and really. And I said, pilot. And then he said, you will answer, name, Peters, rank, flight attendant. Are you pilot or navigator? And I said, pilot. What aircraft do you fly? And I just tornado, and that was it, really.
Somebody else came in sometime later and, you know, said, what's your number, what's your rank, what's your name, where are you from? And then he said, well, it doesn't matter, Nicol, I know you're a navigator. And that strikes home when you think, well, it's not a difficult guess to make, you know, whether you're a pilot or a navigator. It's not unreasonable. They'd been guessing earlier down the line, trying to trick us. And so I said, I cannot answer that question. And he said, okay, I can tell your navigator that you fly Tornadoes. Again, not a difficult guess to say that we were so deep inside Iraqi territory in Tornadoes. And then he said, and I know you come from Bahrain. Again, all this was in the papers. So it's more and more worrying. He's getting at you now. You're thinking, where's this information come from? Conceivably, he could be guessing. Conceivably, he could have seen it in papers. Undoubtedly there were television reports about, you know, a crew being shot down from Bahrain or whatever it was. And in the event, there was an awful lot of television reports about that. And an awful lot of information could be gleaned by the enemy from those press and TV reports. So again, you know, although I was concerned, I wasn't, you know, distraught by the whole thing. And then he said, I know you come here and refuel from your Victor tankers and drop your bombs from... You refuel from your Victor tankers at 10,000 feet, and then you come and drop your bombs on me. And I'm looking at him, and I think he knows that, you know, that he's found a little bit of a hook here. And then he said, and I also know that your attack didn't work, and that you dropped your bombs in the desert. And then I knew that the only person that this could have come off from was JP. And, you know, I just thinking to myself, you know, what have they done to him to make him tell them? And you're concerned, and I was very concerned for him, but I was thinking, what are they going to do to me to make me tell them? there seemed to be a change, a purpose to this one. They force you down onto the black vinyl tubular chair, and somebody said, "What's your number?" Quite slowly, "What's your rank? What's your name?" And then they said, "What squadron are you from?" And I said, "I cannot answer that." And half it got out. And then somebody, it felt, you know, like the world exploded in my head. Somebody hit me with a fist or a piece of wood or a club. I don't know what it was. But the lights just went out in my head and then came on again brilliantly. You know, there was, the Milky Way was going off in there. And then somebody punched me in the face. It definitely felt like a fist. And then kicked me in the stomach or something. I don't know what it was. And while this is going on, the guy's trying to question you, but it's in the distance. You can't hear anything. You know, there's nothing there apart from somebody, you know, really working you over. And I was sitting, feeling the blood dripping off my nose, and I could feel it hitting my flying suit, you know, through my flying suit, my chemical suit, long johns, and I could just feel it dripping down on there. And I thought, you know, this is it. This really is it. And then somebody dragged my boot off. I could feel somebody pulling at my boot, tearing my boot off. And then somebody was hitting my shin with, I don't know, so hitting my shin with an implement, you know, something sharp and something narrow. And then this, again, it went on. And then somebody grabbed hold of my hair and stuffed tissue paper down the back of my neck. And this was the worst thing, I think, that they did. Not what they did after that or anything that had gone before. The physical act of putting tissue paper down your neck, and you think, what the hell is going on? You're sitting there in a completely blindfolded, completely disorientated, however many thousands of miles from home, from everything that you know, from everything that you understand. And somebody has pulled your hair back, pulled your head back, and put tissue paper down your neck. And you think, what is he going to do? What is this for? What is going to happen? And that, if he'd asked me a question then, I think I probably would have given in then. But they didn't. He just lit the tissue paper at the back of my neck. It's enough, you know, this is enough now. This has gone on too far. Ask me another question and I'm yours. I've given in. You feel failure, you know. This is the second time in a short space of time, we presume it was a short space of time, that you failed in what you've been directed to do. So you feel a complete failure. You've let yourself down. You've let all of your comrades down. Would they have done the same thing in the situation? You know, would they have held on longer? Who else is in there in other rooms holding on longer? It's a total sense of failure.
In the ensuing interrogations, Peters and Nicholl avoided giving away anything of military value. But their ordeal was far from over.
We'd been there for a day or so, I suppose, in this corridor. And I was kind of asleep, and they suddenly kicked you up, and you sat up. And you had 4 or 5 guys around you, and you were just standing over you, and they came down and said, "You're a war criminal." I said, "No." I said, "You're a war criminal, you've killed women and children, and we're going to shoot you." And I said, "No." And they said, "We will put you on television as a war criminal." I said, "No." And they say, "If you do not go on television, we will kill you." And I said, "No." And they said, you will go on television as a war criminal." I said, "No." I kept on refusing. And each time they kept on kind of punctuating it with a bloody slap around the face or hitting me. And then they said, "Right, you know, you will never see your wife or children again." And they He started picking me up and they just put a gun against my head. And I just thought, well, shit. You know, because the only way you can fight them at that stage is to survive. And so I said, okay.
And I said, I've committed no war crimes. And he said, yes, you have. You've attacked a country that hasn't declared war on you, so we can execute you for this. He said, or you can go on TV. And it wasn't a hard decision for me to make. Although, you know, I didn't want to do it, there was no way that I was going to be taken out the back and put up against a wall and shot for the simple act where I could go on TV and not do it. And the reason, my reasoning for this, right or wrong, was that I'd always expected this to happen at some point. And they had already used the civilian hostages on TV. There's that appalling scene of the little boy being used on TV, and it just brought outrage to the world. And I thought, well, you know, if you do this, hopefully it'll do the same thing. And of course, I was going to be able to tell people at home that I was alive, which I was convinced, you know, that there's no way that these Iraqis were going through the Red Cross. I was, you know, this was my way of getting a message home to say I was alive, and that was a concern for me as well.
بريطاني جنسية من القوة الجوية البريطانية. ما هو عمرك؟ Your age?
27.
عمري 26 سنة. وحدتك المنسوب إليها؟ Your unit?
15 Squadron. They asked us a prepared list of questions, going through, you know, what aircraft it was that we flew, etc. Tornado.
طائرتي هي طائرة تورنيدو. القاعدة التي انطلقت منها base of mission
Maharak, Bahrain. And I tried to answer them as stilted as possible, and also to use the exact words that they used, which weren't making, you know, grammatical sense and things, to try to show that I was under duress.
To
an attack an Iraqi airfield.
كانت مهمتي هي مهاجمة أحد المطارات العراقية. كيف تم إسقاط طائرتك? How you have been shot down?
I was shot down by an Iraqi system. I do not know what it was.
تم إصابتي بمنظومة عراقية لا أتمكن من تحديد نوعها. هل لديك ما تقوله في هذه الحرب العدوانية ضد العراق? What do you think of this war against Iraq?
I think this war should be stopped so we can go home. I do not agree on this war with Iraq. And then at the end, they said, you can send a message home now, or do you want to send a message home? It was incredibly difficult to stand there, to sit there and send the message home. It was very, very moving for me.
هل لديك رسالة؟ Do you have a message to be sent?
Mum and Dad, if you're listening, everything is okay here. Please pray for me. We should be home soon.
Eventually, they just got my name and rank, that I was shot down by a missile and I'd bombed an airfield. And that's where you win, because I say your body doesn't look good, but in your mind, you've won because they want you to do something and you haven't done it. Okay, you've gone on TV, but you hadn't done what they wanted you to do.
Your age?
29.
عمري هو 29 سنة. الوحدة your unit and squadron?
Maharak in Bahrain. 15 Squadron.
I made sure my eye was towards the camera as best I could, and look down and not look at the camera.
مطار المحرق في البحرين. نوع الطائرة type of aircraft?
Tornado.
They said you can have a personal comment, and that's I suppose that you get, having had the thought of suddenly you were going to display yourself to Helen, I suppose, and I thought you know, this is probably the last time she's going to see me, and it's like this. It's not honourable. So I kind of said Helen, Tony, and Guy, and then I wanted to say something to my mother and father, but I couldn't. It was
هل لديك رسالة؟ Do you have a message?
Tony and Guy, I love you. Mother and father.
After their television appearance, the Iraqis locked them away in solitary confinement. Their weeks of isolation ended abruptly on the 23rd of February.
Suddenly heard this bomb incoming, and we thought, and then the whole world just, I mean, this was a really strong building, and the whole world just, you know, blew apart. I mean, you kind of, the whole building just shook, and it was complete blackness and an incredible, massive noise, and then followed by another one.
I thought, you know, my God, we're the target this time. You know, this just isn't close. We are actually being bombed here. And I scrambled out of my sleeping bag, put the old sand shoes, the trainers on that they'd given me, tried to tie them around my feet with some string, and I'd also managed to trick them into giving me more water than usual. So I had a bowl of water there as well, which I was planning to have my first wash for 4 weeks with that, and I sat that beside me in case there was a fire. God knows what I was going to do with it. And then with the food bowl that they'd left, I padded that out with some blankets, and I sat with that on my head in some vain hope of protecting myself from the falling masonry. My life flashed past my eyes when that second bomb came in, definitely. I thought, you know, I was lifted bodily up off the floor, and I was suspended in midair, if you like. And it seemed to take forever to get back down again to the floor. I thought the floors had come in and I was falling through the building or something. That's, when taken in context with being hit by a missile, being shot out of the sky, being directly hit by Allied bombs comes fairly close to the edge.
Eventually, one guy his cell got blown open, so he got out of his cell, and he managed to open the little food hatches, and it allowed us to talk along. So I screamed out, John Nichol, are you there? And it bounced down the corridor, and I heard back, yeah, John, you're okay. And after that, you don't have to ask anything of your mate, because you know he's there, and you know he's okay. So that, and all I could think of, I said, I bet you're not a anymore. And he said, no, I'm sitting here with a plastic bowl on my head, all over the floor.
On the 4th of March, 4 days after the war ended, John Peters was released by the Iraqis and driven to Jordan. He'd been imprisoned for 47 days, more than 40 of them in total isolation. John Nichol was freed the following day and flown to Riyadh. And then on to Cyprus.
At Riyadh, we got changed over onto an RAF Hercules for the onward journey. And when I got on there, one of the loadmasters came up and said, you know, you need to look at this this newspaper. And it had John's release in there, and all of the press furore that had been caused by all of this, and how he was on the front page of all of the papers all around the world. And it also said that people still didn't know where I was. And that my parents didn't know if I was alive or dead, and that they were just, you know, barricaded behind their door at home waiting for news. And that, you know, you could tell from the article and the way the newspaper was written that they were just being harassed by the media. It felt, for me, it felt that they were having 30 times harder. It felt for me that they were having a much harder time, you know, than I was of the whole thing, because they didn't know if I was alive or if I was dead. At least I knew, you know, what was going on. They just had no information at all. And it was an appalling feeling to sit helplessly on an aircraft and, you know, not be able to say, you know, I'm alive, I'm okay, you don't need to worry anymore. And I just broke down sitting on the aircraft.
Well, the first thing, obviously, I wanted to do in Cyprus was phone Helen. So they had to use phone card. I couldn't believe we had to use phone cards. And the chief of the hospital gave me a phone card, and I said, "No, can I have two, please?" And I got two phone cards, and I went along the corridor, and there was just a phone in the corridor, and it was all very quiet. And he left me, and I phoned home. And Taj answered, a guy on the squadron. I said, "Why the bloody hell are you doing that?" Because it was about 3 o'clock in the morning back in Germany. And he said, "Oh, we're all celebrating. I'll go get Helen." And I think Helen must have been quite drunk, because first thing she said, you know, was, I said, "Hi, it's me." And she said, "Have you still got your balls?"
When we arrived at Cyprus, the first thing I wanted to do was get to a telephone, and they eventually managed to get me a telephone and a line out, and the call was intercepted by the British telecom operators, and this had been because that the people had been phoning them constantly, the press had been on the phone constantly, asking for news, asking for information, asking for comments, and so they'd had to have an intercept put on the line so people couldn't get through, and I couldn't speak to the BT operator, she couldn't hear me, and so I was getting more and more frustrated, more and more upset, and eventually managed to get through to my brother, who lives in London, and I spoke to him and his wife on the phone. And, well, when I say spoke to him and his wife on the phone, you know, I held the phone in my hand, and we couldn't really say anything, you know. I mean, it was just, to hear a family voice on the phone was too much for me.
One of my big fears during captivity was Guy was going to forget me, because he was of that age that I thought he was going to not remember me. But Helen was standing on the steps holding Tony, who by this stage looked twice, you know, huge into what I saw last time. And Guy just ran down the stairs along the path, and, you know, "Daddy, Daddy," and that was very good. You know, so I just picked it up and I hugged him, and Helen, we just kind of stood and hugged for a while. And then we went into the building and had some champagne, and then, you know, just really back to normal, really. I mean, you have, as I say, your moments are very short now, and then you resume your sort of a lifestyle. So we had some champagne, and then we went out and did the photo call with the press.
Flight Lieutenants John Peters and John Nichol have returned to normal flying duties with the Royal Air Force.